Good morning. Continuing with Paul, Series 2, Lesson 151. We're doing the third missionary journey of Paul. He leaves Ephesus and he's on his way to Jerusalem. But on his way to Jerusalem, he makes several stops, and one of those stops is Caesarea. While he is in Ephesus, he wants to go to Rome, so he writes a letter to Rome. And in that letter to Rome, he explains the road to salvation. As a matter of fact, in the book of Romans, you could go, there's several Bible verses that you could go to explain the gospel to a non-believer, because that's exactly what Paul does in his letter to Rome. He explains salvation. He explains step by step his encounter with Jesus Christ on the road to Damascus. He explains that he was blind and that Ananias prayed with him, and that the scales came off his eyes, that he studied with Ananias, his journeys, everything that has happened to him, and the reason why he does what he does. He explains in the book of Romans. Following, and in the book of Romans, he explaining salvation, he says that the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal salvation in Jesus Christ. And that you can find in Romans chapter 6, verse 23. He's sailing towards Jerusalem. He stops in Caesarea. In Caesarea, he stays with someone called Philip. He's called Philip the Evangelist. And while he's there, there is a gathering, because obviously Paul came. Everybody came to find out what happened to Paul and what went on his journey, and to talk to him and, welcome him back home. And while there's that gathering and everybody's fellowshipping, there is a prophet called Agabus, and Agabus warns Paul not to go back to Jerusalem, because there's a lot of trouble festering in Jerusalem, that things are very agitated there, and it would not be safe for him to go back to Jerusalem. But he takes no heed of that advice. He doesn't care. He says, no, I'm going to go to Jerusalem. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to Jerusalem, right? He doesn't hear the word of the prophet. He makes his decision to go to Jerusalem. So when he reaches Jerusalem, like he always does, he goes to, and like a good Jew that he goes to the synagogue. When he goes to the synagogue, they notice who he is, and immediately they apprehend him, right? So he goes to the temple, they see him in the temple and in the synagogue, they drag him outside into the street, they're pounding on him, they're beating him up, and all of a sudden, the Roman soldiers show up. And when the Roman soldiers show up, the Jewish people stop hitting on him, because obviously this is the authority. So they stop hitting on Paul, and Lysias is the captain of the guard, and he questions what is happening and what's going on. And they say, oh, this man, he's just coming to disturb the peace here in the city, and he's prophesying things that are not true, and he's blaspheming, and da-da-da-da. So Lysias takes him into custody, and he takes him up to jail, right? While he's dragging him, he doesn't do it personally. He tells his soldiers to do it. He's the captain. When he tells the soldiers to take him off to jail, and they're dragging him off to jail, Paul turns around and talks to him in Greek, and that surprised him. That caught him off guard, because the people that speak Greek are the Roman citizens. So that took him off guard right there. And Paul asked if he can address the people. And there Paul turns around and he does his sermon on the stairs. And in the sermon on the stairs, he explains to the Hebrew people who he is, where he came from. Again, he goes back to his status. Why does he mention his status and his credentials? Because he needs to let them understand that he is without questioning, that you cannot question how valid his knowledge is, or how valid he as his character is. So who are you, Paul? Well, this is who I am. I am the Jews of the Jews and Rome of the Romans. I studied with Gamaliel, which is the best priest that you could study under, the best rabbi. He mentions how he has always been faithful in keeping the law. He mentions that he too was once one of you that persecuted the Christians. And he retells the accounts of how he encountered Jesus Christ on the road to Damascus. The Jews listen attentively and quietly as he speaks. He speaks about Ananias and how Ananias prayed for him and baptized him. He speaks to them and he tells them how God warned him not to come to Jerusalem, but he came, right, to share the word with the Jews. Right there, he also speaks about sharing the word of God with the Gentiles. And when he says that, they got angry again. Why? Because the Jewish people believed that the word of God was only for them, that it was not for the Gentiles. So they get angry again. They start, kill him, off with him from this earth, kill him. Right? They want to annihilate him. There, the captain gets. The captain sees that the multitude is getting rowdier and rowdier, and immediately brings Paul out from that area, puts him back in the barracks where he is safe. So at this point, he orders his soldiers to give Paul a whipping, just to satisfy the Jewish people and for the Jewish people just to be quiet, right? Okay, we took him into custody. You're accusing him of disrupting the peace. We took him into custody. We're going to punish him and we're going to release him. And that way you guys are satisfied. But when Paul hears that he's about to be whooped, which is what the law says, the Roman law, he asks, is it lawful to beat a Roman citizen? And right there, the captain of the guard cancels the whipping because it's against the law to whip a Roman citizen. So Paul didn't get that whipping, right? And in the morning, he's going to go before the Jewish court. The Jewish court is called the Sanhedrin. And it is made up of two groups of people, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right? They do not believe, the Sadducees did not believe in life after death. They do not believe in the resurrection, and they do not believe in angels nor in spirits. They do not believe in any of this. While on the other hand, the Pharisees did believe in life after death. They did believe in the resurrection. They did believe in angels. They did believe in spirits. They believed in a heaven and a hell. These people did not. So when Paul is talking at the beginning of his speech, everybody's listening attentively. But when he starts to mention that he believes in the resurrection and that he believes in life after death, these people automatically stop listening because that is not part of their philosophy or their theory or their doctrine. These, on the other hand, favor Paul because all of the things that he's saying, he believes. What is it that they do not believe? They do not believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. So, when he's talking before them, one of the Jewish, the one that's in charge of the court, he questions Paul, and Paul says that he has done nothing wrong and that he has always been lawful. And right there, by saying this, he has to shut his mouth, because how can you say that you have always obeyed the law and that you have always been in keeping with the Jewish laws and traditions? So right there, he sends someone else to smack him. So somebody hits Paul, and Paul gets infuriated and answers back aggressively. And immediately that he talks back in that tone, he realizes that he did a mistake, and he right there apologizes. Even though he was provoked, it doesn't mean that we need to react in that way. We need to control our emotion and our reactions. It is not justified to say, just because so-and-so did this means that I can do this now. You still need to do what's right. So he apologizes. But they get very rowdy, and the captain stays behind to listen what his charges are. But as Paul continues to talk, he sees that the group of people are getting rowdier and rowdier, and he decides to take Paul away from that scene because he fears for his life. So he takes him away from there and he puts him back in the barracks. So while he's back in the barracks, Paul is thinking, why am I here? What did I do? He told me not to come, but I came anyway. I'm such a hard-headed. I don't listen. I do whatever I want without listening to advice. So he's pounding. Mea culpa, my fault. It's my fault that I was here. I sinned. I was disobedient. I did not listen. So while he's in that agony, and not only agony that he's in trouble, but he's really agonizing that he cannot continue God's work, because he's like, if they're gonna, I can't. They told me not to come. That if I come, I was going to be bound, and here I am. I'm bound. I'm in prison again, and I don't know what's gonna happen. So there, Jesus appears to him. And Jesus tells him, fear not, be of good cheer, because you will testify of me in Rome. What Jesus was telling Paul with this information was, don't worry, it's not going to end here. You will go to Rome. So with that being said, Paul was not worried anymore, because he knew that God was working, even though he didn't know what was happening, right? It so happened that Paul's nephew comes to visit Paul in jail, and Paul's nephew informs Paul of a plot to assassinate him. Paul then calls the captain of the guard, and tells his nephew to tell the captain of the guard everything that he heard. The nephew tells the captain of the guard about the plot to assassinate Paul, that they were going to come and ask him to bring Paul to court again in the morning, and while Paul was there, they were going to kill him. So with that information being known, Lysias makes an attempt to help Paul escape from prison. And we'll find out tomorrow what happens. But we already know that he makes it to Rome. So technically we know that he does escape, but with his help, with the help of the captain of the guard. So see you next time to see what happens in Rome. Bye.